Hello everyone, welcome to the Bluebook Records. So basic citation forms. What are we talking about here? This is in Rule 18.1. There are a lot of citation forms that can be attributed to the internet, electronic media, etc. From web pages, blogs, to podcasts, non-commercial recordings, social media posts, that sort of thing. But we'll really dig deep into a few of them. But my suggestion is to consult, if you think you have one of these citations, or you want to point to one of these sources, go to Rule 18.1 and just kind of scan the chart in A and B to kind of get an idea how you might cite that. But now moving to Rule 18.2, the Internet. The basic rule in the Blue Book in Rule 18.2 and the basic rule overall is to go for the printed source first. Unless there's a digital copy that's authenticated, official, or an exact copy of the printed source. So for internet sources, and this is 18.2, you'll follow these general citation principles. So 18.2.1. If you can cite to the internet as if it's the original print source, you would, if it's authenticated, official, or an exact copy of the source that's online, you can cite as if you're citing to the original print source. You don't need any URL information. So for example, some places have discontinued print resources, going straight to online resources. And so we would cite as if it was the original print source. So when should the URL be appended? So, and this is subsection B. For obscure sources. So if the information is available in a traditional source, but it's obscure or basically unavailable, or if it would just help the user to have a parallel citation to the internet or electronic source. Then we make the citation to the traditional source and to the internet source by including the URL to the end of the citation. Then the Blue Book explains something what they call online sources with print characteristics. In this situation, you would cite as if you are citing the print source, and then the URL directly to the end of that citation. Even though it might not be available in print. And they give a couple of examples. The Federal Trade Commission, consumer fraud in the United States at 12 in 2007, set off by a comma, and the URL to the print source. So then we're using parentheticals just like we would. So like information, creating context to the cited material. And you can also have information such as on file with author, emphasis added, that sort of thing. So now subsection D, archiving of internet sources, or providing a permanent link. So sometimes the internet is not necessarily in the business of permanence like a library would be in. Like with a book that's in the library, it's going to be there in theory indefinitely. That's not the case for the internet. So when you have an internet source, the idea is to use a archiving service. One of the most popular now is perma.cc. What you do is you go to their website. You need to sign up and provide your information or institutional affiliation, or ask your librarian to help you sign up. And just simply put the URL in their website, and they create a shortened form of that URL. But in addition to that, they've also made a permanent version of that URL that in theory will last indefinitely. So if 5 or 10 years from now, someone is reading the article and wants to look at a website that you've cited to, and they go back and the website's changed and you don't know exactly where it's moved to, you have that archived internet source that you can go to and check it out. And those are appended at the end in brackets. So now 18.2.2, citations to internet sources. When the author is available, provide the author in ordinary Roman type. If an author is not available, you can omit the author and move to the title of the source, set off by a comma, and the domain name or the title of the website in small caps, the date or date and time if available, set off by a comma, and then the URL. And then of course I would add a permalink as well. So for social media feeds, we're providing the author's name. If it's obvious and verifiable, you can provide the author's name and their or username and handle on the social media platform. And then the name of the website in small caps, followed by the URL, and then the permalink. So they give an example of Twitter. So your Twitter handle, followed by Twitter in small caps when that particular post was made, and followed by the URL to that post. So titles. So the question is, what is the title of a website page? There's a couple ways you can approach this. One would be to use the title in the title bar in your browser. It's found at the top of your browser. Or if it's clearly written in the browser itself, like at the top of an article. So the citations should ideally include the homepage or domain name of the website. In small caps. And the Blue Book also discusses more titles going forward in this specific rule that you can consult. Now, as for the date and time, it should be provided as it appears on the internet site, only if it's cited in that material. If there's no date clearly written, then you can add something like last updated or last modified, or last visited, that sort of thing. But here's the difference. If you're using a permalink or like perma.cc, then you won't need to use that parenthetical after the URL. So if you're using perma.cc and the date's clear when that snapshot was made, then you don't need to use last visited. So now the URL. Use the full URL. If there's a short link, then you can use the short link. Sometimes it's not so easy to reach the page from a particular URL. Like you might have to click a few buttons to get there. It's okay to describe that process in a parenthetical. So you can say, choose this, click this in the drop down, etc. Use a pin citation where if it makes sense. So if the internet source is using a PDF of a print version, then go ahead and pin cite to the PDF page. But you don't need to use any other kind of pin citing convention. And Blue Book says don't use like screen numbers. So Rule 18.3, commercial electronic databases. So Blue Book, these electronic sources are in general reliable. and have their own document numbers. So Bluebook says that these electronic databases you can cite according to the rules specified in this chart. CD-ROM and other electronic storage. This is when CDs were storing information. So usually that information can be found in print form. And so you would just go ahead and cite to the print form. Otherwise, you can cite it in that medium. So the citation format you can see in Rule 18.4. Such and such CD-ROM. Micro form. This is Rule 18.5. In general, if it's reproduced in microform, you really don't need to indicate that fact because microforms are kind of snapshots of actual documents, actual materials. So you would be using the citation to the actual material. But if it's difficult to obtain the original, like a newspaper that's 50 or more years old, you may set off the original citation by a comma and designate that as microformed on, and then which fiche, microfiche, where that's located. Films, broadcasts, and non-commercial video material use small caps for films. Television, radio, we're using in italics by title, episode name, and date. Add the name of the company if you know, and then the date. And there's some examples in Rule 18.6. Now 18.7, audio recordings. This is if it's a song, you'll indicate in small caps artist, album title, followed by a parentheses of the including the publishing company and year. If you're citing to a particular song, that should go in italics, followed by on. Then the Bluebook suggests to citations to time phrases, time markers. So non-commercial recordings use ordinary Roman type, and then just at the end indicate where the reader can find that information. Podcasts now, very popular. If the audio recording that you're citing to is accessed online, available only online, like a podcast, then use the principles in Rule 18.2.2. And if necessary, provide a timestamp as well, or a time marker as well. So photographs and illustrations, this is Rule 18.8. So here we're using untitled photographs using the artist's name, then followed by photography or illustration of, provide a description, and then in italics, and then provide the full citation of the applicable work. You can check out some examples in Rule 18.8. So they have photograph of Bill Clinton and President Kennedy in the specific citation. Short citation forms for Rule 18.9. For the internet, when citing a previously referenced internet site, you can use supra, the last name of the author, if there's an author, or the title of description of the document. You can use id if it makes sense. If you're citing to a commercial database, use the unique database identifier, and there's an example here of a Westlaw. For CD-ROMs, microforms, films, broadcasts, you can use the short form. Check out Rule 4 for these, and I would check out the examples in Rule 18.9. So that's it for Rule 18. Thanks, everybody. We'll take a quick break and move on to Rule 19.